Aw, yeah. Gonna get me some loving. God, I am so lonely right now. Yo, what is up guys, this is Review-Dragonage here and welcome to my next game review. This time I am doing Dragon Age Inquisition, perhaps my most favourite game of 2014. Now, the plot of this game is you are pretty much whatever you create your character to be, since you can create your own character. And you have to stop an evil being called Corypheus from becoming some sort of god who wants to rule the world. Now, he's released a spawn of enemies called the Darkspawn and demons from the place called the Fade, and you have a source of power called the Marker, which can be used to disrupt rifts in the world to stop more demons from coming through. And you become the Inquisitor, a person who is required when the world needs someone to protect it, and that is your job, to stop Corypheus from pretty much taking over the entire world. Now the plot is pretty simple if you think about it. Once again, you're just basically stopping some guy from taking over the world, but but when you play the game, there is a lot more things going on, and it is a really good story in my case. A lot of decent characters. Yeah, a lot of decent characters. The gameplay is awesome, and everything else, and we'll talk about those in a minute. Now first, I want to talk about the characters, because this is a game created by BioWare, and characters are essential when it comes to RPG games. Because BioWare made Mass Effect near enough the same time as the first Dragon Age, and it is no different. The characters are just as important as any RPG game, and the thing is, this game has done its characters incredibly well. A lot better than I was expecting. Every single character has their own niche to them, that they're just always so likable. Like for example, Varric is a dwarf who pretty much is like the sarcastic guy of the entire team, the Joker if you think about it. And he's awesome. He's just someone you would want to mess around with, or just like have a cool card game or something once in a while. Now there is, like Mass Effect, there is missions where you can that are linked to your linked to the characters, the friends, the other characters in the game, and you can use that to build friendships with them, which will help in the game, which means they'll become accustomed to you and they'll like you. Now, since this is also a BioWare game, or technically an RPG anyway, you can romance people now. Pretty much you can romance most people, but this isn't just like some RPGs where it's just like you can only be like a romance with straight people. No, this game actually is kind of both. You can have straight and it can be homosexual relationships, and it's pretty fun at times. It's pretty funny.
Yes, thank you.
Now, I want to go back to the characters again. The characters were pretty damn cool. Like they all have their own backstories and everything. Like there's always been something has always been going on in their lives that's got them to this point in time. And that's what I like about the characters. There's a lot of backstory behind them, and you explore upon that throughout the game the more you go through it. And that is why I like RPGs, because you get to know the characters more often, and you can form attachments with them, which is what I like. Especially, you get to know them, and you really like them being around. And if you see one of them die, which none of them don't, I think, it's pretty sad. But I don't think BioWare went that far with the characters in this game compared to Mass Effect, because none of the characters die, I will say that. I think. Now, the game, all RPGs in a way, has its crafting and inventory system and customization of your character's weaponry and armor. Now you can create your own weaponry with materials that you get from killing animals which have certain skins which will make the weaponry better and more stronger and have different effects to them against enemies. It's the same with the armor as well. You need different materials to make better stuff. It's a lot of gathering and things, but eventually the more you play the game, the more stuff eventually you'll have where you don't really need to go out into the world and kill things just to get what you need. Because you're that high of a level and you have that much stuff, you won't really need to make that stuff, and because you'll have that much of like powerful gear, you won't necessarily need to get any more stuff to make any better stuff. Now there is certain armor and weaponry that only certain classes can use, or species technically, since you can also change your character's species as well, from a human, elf, dwarf, or a Quinari. And there are certain armors and pieces and weaponry that are only linked to that class or character, because only some pieces of equipment can only be used by one certain character, which can give them a significant boost in battle or something that would help them. Now, creating your own, you can also, not only can you create your own armor, you can also, and weaponry, you can also modify them in a way, like creating runes which give your weapons a significant different power, a magical power. Like you can have fire damage, cold damage, a rune that is very damaging against dragons, against demons, against corrupted beings, or the undead, should I say. So it's a really likable system to me, because it was very simple, and you could craft whatever you want as long as you had the materials and if they were decent enough. And plus it would also say the amount of armor they would have, like they would provide, or how much damage they would provide. And I like that system as well, and it tells you all the significant stats and boosts compared to other weaponry as well, since you can see in your inventory as well. There's also accessories which are pretty much like upgrades, like a belt which can offer like a significant boost to fire resistance or cold resistance. There is also rings which provide power boosts to either your powers or significant stats on your character. And there is one more thing. Yes, there is amulets, which pretty much are like the same as the rings, but pretty much just to do with your stats. Not only that, not only can you change the armor and everything on your character, you can also do it on all the other characters, because you can actually play when you're playing the game, you can actually play as the other characters, which was an awesome an awesome game feature that I didn't really know about, and it actually surprised me, and I thought this was a really cool thing. But most of the time I just stayed as my own character. I played as the others when I needed to be them. Now, next is the combat system. Now, the combat system in this game is pretty like most RPGs. Your character has significant powers to their class. You can choose from 3 classes. You can be a warrior, you can be a mage, which is to do with magic and everything, and you can be a rogue, which is more or less to do with stealth and bows and arrows and range, pretty much. And a warrior is to do with sword and shield, pretty much. Now, each one of these classes have their own significant powers, and when you're the Inquisitor, you have certain abilities that your other characters don't have. But the other characters also, at a certain point, get their own special power abilities only for their class that they can use, which is quite cool, which is really good because each class has something different to them. Now, you need to, well, pretty much to kill enemies, you need to level up so you can gain points to unlock powers. Now, the powers have like 2 levels to themselves at points. There's the main, like there's the main one to unlock it, so you can use it, and then there's the upgrade feature. And also in the leveling system of the combats, and also, yeah, the leveling up in the combat system, there is small little upgrades along the way that aren't like, you know, powers, but they're just pretty much there as to make you more stronger against the enemy, and it's a bonus upgrade to help you along the way. Now also the combat system, or the leveling up should I say, goes as far as level 27. And your characters, the other characters, your companions, level up a lot at the same time as well. But they level up halfway through the rank to your character. So once you reach halfway of a level, they rank up. Gaining a point for them. Now, but to be fair, I think 27 is a good amount of levels, because by the time you get to that point, you are pretty overpowered, I will say. I got to a certain point in the game, and I went to another area afterwards. I'd finished a mission, or a main mission. All the enemies were just like easy as hell to kill, meaning I pretty much was overpowered because of the gear and the ranking up I'd done over time. Now the powers have different effects on the enemy. Some would like weaken them, some would taunt them, meaning it would catch them off guard. Some would like stun them, freeze them, burn them, electrify them. Like, this is basically a game where the combat system is very diverse. A lot of mechanics were put into the game to make the effects work against the enemies. And it is really incredible that you have to also watch out for enemies that have these attributes and powers as well, like cold and fire and electricity as well, because unless you have certain upgrades that you don't have against these powers, then you will pretty much get killed quite easily.
The ward is destroyed.
Now, the enemies. There is a wide diversity of enemies in the game. You have the demons, which have different types. You have big giant dudes, which can take a lot of damage, and then there's these other special types that have certain powers to them against you. And yeah, there's not only just demons and darkspawners, even humans and elves and dwarves and templars and stuff, all in like the humanoid category, which will all have their own abilities, or as soldiers. Like the special classes like mages, warriors, and rogues to fight against. Now, not only that, there is also the bosses. The bosses can be challenging, so you have to really think with your strategy and your leveling up and the powers and timing to do it. And I will say, fighting a dragon is probably the best thing in the entire game. It was amazing killing these things and fighting them. You felt like a badass after you had taken one down. Especially since they give you a lot of decent loot in the end. Now, not only that, enemies also have their own certain weaknesses. Like, some will be weak against firepower or magic. Some will be weak against ice magic. Some against electricity. Some against other powers. And they also have, and because of like your character's companion's powers, they can weaken enemies with those powers. But also the enemies all have a significant attribute that they can overpower you in a way. Like dragons have their stun ability, which when they call in their little friends. Some enemies can freeze you in place with their ice power, and some enemies are just so big they will just overpower you with their size. It can get annoying at times, but I will say it was very fun at most of the time fighting against enemies. At some point I thought it got a little bit boring because some of the enemies types were kind of the same. Like you'd have the warrior types, then you'd have the mage type, then you'd have the big brute type, and then you'd have the range type, and then fair, that was it, and they were just trying to mix them up a bit at times, try and make them look different. But other than that, the enemies and everything were all incredibly detailed and done very well, and they were actually pretty hard to take down at first until I became overpowered. Now, next I want to talk about the world itself. Vadus is an amazing world with a lot of different areas. There are 12, I think, there are about 8 or 12 different areas. I think it's about 8 or 9 main areas that you can explore and that are really big and everything, and there's like a lot of missions and side quests to do. And then there's about a few areas that are like only available for a certain mission or a different time. Now I want to say each of the worlds, each of the settings are amazing. You got a few that are in the desert, snow, forest and mountainous regions, but the world, all these areas look incredibly good. I mean, the developers have done a very good job on creating this world. Because this is my first Dragon Age game, and I didn't want to see this as like a Mass Effect game in the medieval ages or fantasy. And this game has done very well at creating this world. Yeah, the developers have done a very good job at creating this world. They've made it see it incredibly differently. And I really liked what it offers. It really felt like a real true RPG to me. All these different areas and everything, like everything I could explore, every single part. And there was these, and not only that, there is a lot of things to go significantly to the world. There was like different animals around. It wasn't just the same kind. There was different types to a certain areas, and some would be stronger, some would be weaker, depending on what the area was like. Now I will say, I think out of all the worlds, I think there was one huge area, which is the Hinterlands. That's probably like the main area that you're pretty much around for most of the game, for the very beginning of the game, until you eventually start doing all the main missions and stuff, and you get to all the other different areas. And I will say, exploring it does take its time. It does take a long time exploring the entire area, but it is very worth it in a way when you eventually get everything done, and you can then move on to the next area. So yeah, and it's like so the BioWare did a very good job on this world and its design and everything, and I really loved the way it looked. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the final pieces of the game that I haven't talked about yet. Now, there is a lot of side quests in this game. There is ones where you can just find random people in the different areas that you go to, and they'll just have random missions for you to do, and you can, yeah, get them done. Or you could decline. You have choice if you want to. Now, not only that, not only is there side quests, there's also these collectibles to find. Now, I never really did find some of the collectibles, like the Morsiak pieces, if that's what they're called. Don't really know how to pronounce that. I never really did find all of them in all the worlds they were in, but I did find all of the shards and Asteriums. Now these Asteriums, I like those because they were a really cool puzzle added to the game, where you had to line up the stars. It was like a dot-to-dot puzzle, but it was much more complex. You really had to think through it to get the reward that you wanted, and at the end of getting all the Asteriums, there will be a secret cave that you would unlock, and it would give you resources. And the shards, also collecting all of them, there was a main quest in itself linked to that, where you can where it would lead you to a secret temple in the desert, which will grant you more powers and more decent weaponry and armor. And I like these little side quests. These two little side quests I enjoyed doing a lot, because it was very fun looking for, and you would get rewarded in the end for doing them. Now also, I want to talk about the graphics. The graphics of this game were very decent. They were good. They weren't the best graphics, but they held up pretty damn well. There was a few frame rate issues, and every time I came out of a loading screen, the sound wouldn't keep up with the game for some reason. I don't know why. But overall, the graphics of the game were very good, and I really loved the design of the characters, like armor and everything, the weaponry and the enemies and the detail of the entire world. It was all really good and very well designed. Now, I want to finally talk about the soundtrack. Now, the soundtrack for Dragon Age Inquisition, I don't think I've played a game for quite a while, for a long time, it's been a long time since I played a game where it's had an amazing soundtrack. This soundtrack for this game was awesome. Especially, I think my best soundtrack of the game is either the main theme or when I'm fighting a dragon. And that soundtrack, when it came on, I felt like it was a badass at the end of it, and it felt like such an awesome battle to remember. It was... I loved the soundtrack of this game. It was up there. It is up there with one of my favorites of the game. So yeah, that is pretty much it for this review, I think. So in the end, Dragon Age Inquisition, overall, amazing game, amazing worlds, amazing inventory, combat system, amazing characters. Apart from a few issues with like frame rate issues, a bit of the graphics issues and all that, and some of the repetitiveness of the enemies, I will give this game a 9.5 out of 10. So that is my review of Dragon Age Inquisition. It has definitely been my most favorite game of 2014, and it is definitely delivered. Because this is a game I had no idea what I was going into, and it was awesome. I hope you have enjoyed this video and this review. If you have other opinions and you can put or other details, you can put those down below in the comments, and I will see and I'll read them also. And I will see you guys in the next random video.